All right, so number 8 with the calculator, it says solve by graphing. Okay? Remember, solving means just what are the x's? If there's 1, if there's 2, how many x's are there? Okay? Just real quick, extra FYI, if you see something that solves the system, like a system of equations, which you will, it's not just talking about the x, it's talking about the x and the y as a point, just FYI, okay? All right, here we go. So we're first going to do this with a graphing calculator, and then I'll show you how to do it by hand for extra practice because a lot of this test is non-calculated. Okay? So here we go. So we have, let me go to my graphing calculator, current document, menu 1.4, menu 1.5, just to clear it so you can start from a good blank copy. And the equation was, if I go back to the equation, 3x squared, 8x, and 4. Here we go. So let's go to a graphing page, and we're going to put 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. Is that correct? Okay. Now, if I press enter to solve this, all I'm going to look for are the x-intercepts. And the steps are, here we go, menu, analyze graph, and find the zeros of the function, because the zeros are the x-intercepts. We'll soft mouse, bottom left says, what's your lower bound? As long as we're to the left of this first x-intercept, we can be anywhere, and then press down on the keypad. And then soft mouse scroll to the right, and there's your first answer. Okay, and yes, you can grab it if you want by pressing down on the keypad and holding it until it closes the hand, and there's your first answer. Okay, let's move this out of the way just so it doesn't. Okay, so now, if I want to find the other one, again the same thing, menu, 6, 1 for the zeros of the function, but this time left of this x-intercept can be about right here. We'll press down on the keypad, we'll soft mouse scroll over to the right, and I get a negative 0.667. Those of you who have been having a lot of practice with fractions, what is a fraction that's equivalent to negative 0.667? Negative 2/3. So I have negative 2/3 and I have negative 2 as my answers. So negative 2/3 and negative 2. We know these are our answers. But for the sake of practice, real quick, let me show you another way that you could have done this in the calculator, then we'll do it by hand. So going back to my first page right here, if I do menu 3.1 and I solve when 3x squared plus 8x plus 4 is equal to 0, I can just do comma x and it'll give me the answer just like that. Here's another way that you can use the calculator to your advantage. But if it says graphing, you can't use this. Okay, I want you to actually show the graph. What would the graph look like? And then get your answers accordingly like that, please. Alright, so let's now go back and do this by hand for the sake of practice, which is a very good idea. Okay? Alright, here we go. So, if I did this by hand, just for the sake of practice, these first two will multiply to get 3x squared. What could they be? What two terms could multiply to give me 3x squared? 3x and x. Okay? Then I go to, remember this is the very first thing that we learned. Then I go to 4 and I think of what two numbers can multiply to give me 4? What are they? 2 and 2, or what else? 1 and 4. Which one should we probably try first? The 2 and 2. Remember, like we did the rainbow? Work from the inside out. Okay? So we're going to try 2 and 2. If I put 2 and 2 here, watch carefully. 2 times 1, 3 times 2. This 2 and 6 will either give me an 8 if I add them, or what? 4 if I'm subtracting them. I wanted an 8. So these two numbers, where I placed this 2 and 2, worked. Okay? So all I have to do now is just figure out what are the signs going to be. Is it going to be both positive? Is one going to be a negative? What do you tell me? Both positive. Because look, I will get a positive 4 when I multiply those. I will still get 3x squared, and then my inside is a positive 2, positive 6 to give me the positive 8. From here, I could set each one equal to 0. And you see, here's the negative 2 that I have right here. And this would be the negative 2/3 that I have right here. Okay? Any other questions? Let's say that you are not good at that method. Okay, this is a good example to show this with. If you're not good with all that method that we just did by hand, you should do something called factor by grouping. What we just did was like the number sense guess and check, strategic guess and check, but we want to do a factor by grouping. Okay, so factor by grouping is going to first multiply my A and C terms. So 3 times 4 gives me 12. I need 2 numbers that will multiply to get a 12, and they will also add to give me the center term, which is an 8. So you tell me, what 2 numbers multiply to give me 12, but they add to give me 8? 2 and 6. So what I would do is, from here, instead of doing this method that we did with number sense, factor by grouping says, let's break these 3 terms up into 4 terms. Okay, so the 3x squared still stays as 3x squared. The 4 still stays as 4. But we're going to break this up to these 2 things right here. You with me? So now 8x is camouflaged as 2x and 6x. That if I now GCF factor from this first thing here, what's the GCF that you see? X. What are the scraps that are left over? 3x plus 2. Good. Now from this second one here, what's the GCF that you see? 2. What are the scraps left over? 3x plus 2. Now remember, with factor by grouping, the carbon copies of what are inside is going to be one of our answers. One of our factors, that is. What's outside of parentheses will be our other answer. Okay? And if you set them individually equal to 0, you get a negative 2 and you get a negative 2/3, which is exactly what we originally got the other methods. Any questions before I close out the video?